Welcome back to Riddell's War Chest. We're in the Glossary and entering into the I's. The I's have it, and the word is iatrogenic harm. Now, this is the harm done by medical and therapeutic professionals and their interventions. For example, labelling a patient with a mental illness diagnosis, thereby adding to their burden, or giving destructive advice or wrong diagnosis. What about mistaken prescriptions or mistaken surgery? Did you know that medical misadventure is now confirmed as one of the greatest causes of death in America today? Beware of iatrogenic harm. Number 2 in the I's is identity politics. Now, the zeitgeist of this age is the equivalent of hiding oneself in a gang or a group, just like we experienced in days of old in the school playground. For example, anybody who develops political agendas that are based on any external source of identification, whether of race, nationality, religion, gender, orientation, social background, or social class. Gender expression is best summarized in 2 ways: emotional insecurity and fashion, and even faith in the Divine Father does not entirely prevent people from forming up in their identifiable groups for greater security, acceptance, identity and safety within the restless, surging sea of humanity we all find ourselves trying to negotiate. Be careful which boat you clamber on to form your identity, and be sure you build your identity on a rock and not on shifting sand. Number 3 in the I's is Islam. Did you know that no devout Muslim declares total loyalty to the law of the land they live in that isn't Muslim? And under Sharia/Islamic law, they are duty-bound to hate all non-Muslims, the infidels, even the nations who host them. And why? Because they have the devil in them and are going to all burn in hell. To execute homosexuals and publicly lash people for adultery and public immodesty is the only standard Islam knows. This has been restated by countless Taliban imam, most of whom are calling for jihad from both Sunni and Shiite sects. There's no getting around it, folks. That's how it is in Islam. And number 4, the incoherent argument. Irrational, illogical, and self-contradictory reasoning is intrinsic to the incoherent argument. Truth is never its primary objective. That is reserved for gaining control of the narrative, the removal of any resistance, and the indulgence of essentially narcissistic, emotion-based reasoning that lacks coherence and consistency, giving rise to many double standards. In the final analysis, we may be sure that what a man believes and argues for is found to be much less about what is and much more about why he needs to believe it. When the facts change, I change my mind. What, sir, do you do? Is a quote from Lord Keynes, the economist. I like it. When the facts change, I change my mind. What, sir, do you do? And number 5 is the incremental encroachment. Subtle, the process by which good men can become Nazis, honest men can become corrupted, and good citizens can become killers. Preachers can go to prostitutes, and innocent children can turn into thieves and thugs by incremental encroachment. I am half Hobbes and half Rousseau, confesses Jordan Peterson. I'm not an ideologue. I find people to be both good and evil. Culture is both security and tyranny. So if the topic interests you, and it should, I suggest you read Animal Farm by George Orwell, or Lord of the Flies, and Ordinary Men by Robert Browning. And then take a hard look at the CIA research experiments called the MK Ultra from the 70s decade, particularly the Milgram experiment. Now, in this experiment, psychologist Stanley Milgram studied the willingness of research subjects to obey an authority figure who instructed them to perform acts that conflicted with their personal conscience. 67% of the research subjects proved willing, against their better judgment, to cause pain and even potential death to others when ordered to, while only 33% of subjects flatly refused. Are we not all in the grip of another huge Milgram experiment, asks Robert Kennedy of Children's Health Defense? Who will sacrifice their inalienable right to express their personal opinion, guaranteed by the First Amendment, or decide for themselves what is and what is not to be injected into their bodies? Who will give up their religious and civil liberties? Who will persecute anyone whose opinion offends them and try to have them deprived of their own civil liberties? That's incremental encroachment, a subtle one, a dangerous one. Watch out for it. And number 6 in the eyes is the immune system. Now, our body's defences are against germs, both bacteria and viruses, an incredibly complex auto-inoculation that needs genuine germs or their denatured parts to practice on, in a process called inoculation. These foreign protein particles should be themselves injected and not built by the genetic plans of mRNA cell saboteurs press-ganging cells, your own cells, into production of alien spike proteins, as in the disastrous mechanics of the recently discovered, yet to be long-term tested mRNA genetic manipulation. This turned every cell thus co-opted into a target for antibodies and killer T cells and cytokines, your own antibodies and T cells. War against yourself, civil war, resulting in cellular and organic damage to every muscle gland, tissue, and mitochondrial cell particle that was unfortunate enough to take them up. That's not all. This risk increases substantially with every booster shot the unfortunate victim receives. You want some sources? I'll give you sources. George Kalin, Dr. John Campbell, Australian Senator Gerard Rennick, Children's Health Defence, and numerous other virologists and microbiologists, still censored or partially censored by governmental inquiries, mainstream media, and medical colleagues. As someone who has suffered both pericarditis and myocarditis from the vaccine, it has been hard to get doctors to put this in writing as they are worried about repercussions, comments a victim. My symptoms still persist now, a year and a half on, which is consistent to what others are experiencing also. I had to report my own injury as no one else would. That's the testimony of one Michael Ware, a YouTube interview. You can search it for yourself. And he's one of the fortunate ones. He's still alive to tell about it. Example number 7 from the eyes, the imposter syndrome. Feeling like a fraud, due to either a bad conscience, for example, I cheated or lied to get this position, or a default mood of inadequate, following a wrong conclusion or life misdefining experience in early years. Insufficiently qualified can become a compulsive obsession if its motivational energy is coming from historical fear or angst. This psychological maladaptation is relevant in this discussion because the emotional insecurity engendered predisposes one to selling out. And haven't we heard enough from people in authority and office selling out? And why? Because settling or selective blindness on occasion, when the stakes are sufficiently high, is almost automatic for such an insecure character. There are still none so blind as those who will not see, through fear of losing their status, their position, their fat salary. After all, they may not be worthy of it in the first place, and if other people gave that status to them, then can't other people take it away from them at any time at all? Let's sell up, let's settle, never mind the ethics. We have an insecurity to indulge and to protect. Now we move to the K's, and first up would have to be Karl Marx, the 19th century German philosopher, originator of identity politics and postmodernism, which doesn't believe in true individualism or agendaless reasoning. You are always and only an example of the priorities of your own class, your own sex or sexual preference. Postmodernism labels the object along a polemic, either as an innocent and powerless victim, you can do no wrong, or an oppressor, everything you do is wrong, either as the grasping rich or the desperate poor, bourgeois or the working class, the industrial proletariat. Tens of millions of innocent people have been killed by the psychogenic paranoia who were merely living under the wrong label. In Stalin's Russia, Pol Pot's Cambodia, Mao's China, and numerous African nations. And if you want to know something really scary, judging from history, the identity politics playing out now in Western universities will eventually spread to the entire Western world, with an inevitable return to tribalism, sects, and factions, as can be seen playing out in American politics today. May God save America, because her current leadership certainly are not going to. K number 2 in the glossary of Riddell's war chest is Keynesian Economics. This is an outmoded economic theory with regard to the trickle-down effect. Have you heard of it? The trickle-down effect. The lifestyles of the billionaires who control international economics and the demonic military/industry cartel prove that it doesn't work. It turns out to be actually a leftist revision to disguise capitalism's right-wing intrinsic greed and lust for power. If you're interested in that topic, I suggest you dive into Peter Goodman's remarkable book, Davos Man. And that concludes this series. We'll be back shortly with the next word in the war chest, Riddell's glossary. Hope you enjoyed it, hope it empowered you, hope it made you armed and dangerous in the best possible way. If you like what I've said so far, let me remind you that you can download the entire transcript for free. Click here and you'll be able to read it for yourself.